What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Merry Dick Miss. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about the development of Gradey Dick. But before we get into that, if at any point you find yourself enjoying this video, subscribe, leave a like, drop a comment. All of that helps out tremendously with the algorithm. And if you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. It's very rare that we see a player come into the NBA with this generational meme potential. Gradey Dick is that guy. He's now in his second year with the Toronto Raptors, and he's already reached that ceiling multiple times over. But as a player, his talent is beginning to reach that same level. He's having an excellent season so far with Toronto. He's averaging 18 points, shooting 36% from three. It's a 10 point per game improvement over his rookie year, which isn't necessarily unexpected. I mean, when you have a guy who is as talented as Gradey Dick is, who has the skill set that he has, this is the natural evolution of a player of his caliber. But there is something interesting that's going on with him. So he's averaging significantly more points despite being a slightly worse shooter. As a rookie, his effective field goal percentage was 52.4. This year, it's down to 50.7. A large chunk of this improvement comes from him getting to the free throw line more. He's making 3.5 foul shots per game, but there is still some inconsistency with his efficiency and also his shot selection to a lesser degree, although I believe he's working through that quite fine. Again, this guy's 21 years old. He is going to struggle with shot IQ for at least a little bit, on top of being able to adapt to the physicalities of NBA defenses. He is also a little undersized for his position. I mean, he's 6'6", but he's only 205 pounds, so he really doesn't have a considerable amount of strength, at least relative to some other guys that have that same physical profile. But there are tangible reasons as to why his efficiency, forget having improved drastically, hasn't improved at all. But there's also a reason why it hasn't tanked, because what I noticed looking at his shooting percentages by zone is that he is actually worse inside of the restricted area this year compared to his rookie season. So far this year, he's shooting about 51% inside of the restricted area compared to 60% as a rookie. So that right there is a huge indicator as to why his efficiency isn't up. However, he's offset that by really developing his mid-range proficiency as well as maintaining a respectable clip from three. As it stands, he's shooting about 36% from three, which was the same mark that he posted as a rookie, and he's around 46% from mid-range. So he's really expanding his game as a scorer, which is promising to see, even if he's not as reliable in the paint, or more specifically inside of the restricted area. The reason for that is opposing coaches are now actually game planning around Gradey Dick alongside Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. Although there is a clearly defined hierarchy in Toronto with Barrett and Barnes at the top, if we wanted to get technical, it'd probably be, at least in terms of building out the franchise, Scotty Barnes is the franchise cornerstone, despite RJ Barrett posting slightly better numbers than him. Regardless, they are the two best players on this team, and Gradey Dick is comfortably in that third position. And opposing coaches are taking note of just how talented this kid is, and also the expanded role that he has, not only in terms of working off of Barnes and Barrett, but now being able to take over games and create shots for himself. When he was a rookie, and you can see this, like if you go back and watch some of the tape from his rookie season, there is significantly less defensive pressure that he faces, particularly inside of the three-point line and inside of the paint. That's just the natural progression of him becoming a more forceful player. Coaches and defenses are actively keying on him, and they're putting more pressure, whether that's multiple extra defenders or the types of defenders, or even like the schemes and how they just defend the Raptors in general. I found something on the NBA, on his shot tracking dashboard for the NBA. So in terms of defensive pressure, Dick is seeing fewer open shots than he was last season, particularly on twos. So 33% of the time, this is courtesy of NBA.com, there is a defender guarding him tightly, which means someone within 2 to 4 feet of him. Last season, that rate was 27%. Grady Dick is now a legitimate offensive talent, and teams are treating him as such, which I think bodes well for his future with Toronto. Obviously, he was going to be a part of their core regardless in some degree, but the fact that teams are so adamant about slowing him down again in just his second season, it really shows how effective he is in this role. And I think what he's doing with Toronto is great for his development. They're not asking him to play out of position. They don't want him to facilitate. They don't expect him to be the conductor of this offense. They have multiple guys who can do that and who do that quite effectively. RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes are terrific all-around players. Grady Dick is giving me early Zach LaVine vibes. I mean, this guy's averaging 18 points and like 2 assists. It doesn't get much more. I don't want to say one dimensional, but it is kind of one dimensional. But he's successful at it. And think about it. He's averaging 18 points per game and shooting 41% from the field. If he brings these percentages up even a little bit, you're looking at like a legitimate 25 points per game scorer, which is freakish when you consider the same production that you're getting from Barrett and Scotty Barnes. If given the appropriate volume, Grady Dick is going to score upwards of 25 per night. He's done it multiple times this season. There have been 5 instances of him shooting the ball more than 20 times, and he has scored no fewer than 26 points in each of those contests. The efficiency has been a little sporadic. Like one game, he shoots 45% on those 20 field goals. The other game, he shoots 30. One of these games, he shot 13 of 26. That was against the Lakers in early November. He has so much room to grow as a scorer. It really is a shock when you're as young as he is and seeing as much defensive pressure as he does at times. It really is like growing pains that he has to work through. But I think that he's managing it quite well because he's still able to play his game. He's still able to get shots that he's comfortable with. And I think what's more impressive to me is that the Raptors are allowing him to play this game. Sometimes going to a bad organization, I don't want to say a bad organization because I think that the Raptors as a team are bad in terms of their record, obviously, but I don't think the organization is bad. Sometimes going to a bad team is really detrimental for a young player because they either get stuck with guys who don't know how to develop them or they're asking them to do things that they're not comfortable with. We see this happen with like every good organization. They just know how to put their players in the right position to succeed, whether this is Oklahoma City, whether this is San Antonio, whether this was the Brooklyn Nets during the Kenny Atkinson days. They just let these guys figure it out. They let them play basketball. They allow them the freedom to do what works, but also the freedom to make mistakes because that is so crucial to the learning portion of an athlete. If you're not allowed to make these mistakes, like if you go to a team that's contending as a young player and you're asked to play big minutes, but if you're getting yanked after 2 turnovers, like you can't grow as quickly as you would hope to. I don't think there's really anything to be concerned about. I haven't seen anyone on social media freaking out that Grady Dick is only shooting 42% from the field. One, because again, the Raptors, they suck. They're like what, 7-20, 7-23, 7-22, something like that, 7-23. They're not playing for anything. They're playing for the future. And to play for the future, you have to allow your young talent the opportunity to develop. So I think that Darko Rajakovic, I think that the organization as a whole is trending in the right direction. And Grady Dick is going to be a huge portion of it because, as we've seen, if you ever reach contending status, one of those roles that you need filled is a secondary shot creator. And Grady Dick fills that role or has the potential to fill that role at an elite level. You need a guy who can play alongside Barnes and Barrett, yes, but you also need a guy who can create when those guys are on the bench, when they're slumping. And I do think things will get a little bit easier as well, especially when the three of them are on the floor together, because it gets to a point where, as a coach, you have to pick and choose who to defend, who you have to pick and choose which player you want to defend as heavily. And in these instances, sometimes Grady Dick is just going to be allowed to work one-on-one, and when that's the case, great. But even in instances when he does face defensive pressure, like being able to just know the intricacies of getting to your spot, whether it's working on little floaters or unorthodox layups, these are all things that he's going to continue to build upon the longer that he stays in the league. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, I'll catch y'all in the next one.